Thank you. Well, good afternoon. After lunch talk, always dangerous, of course, and especially in this darkish room. So I hope to keep you awake. Let me briefly present myself for those who do not know me. Bart Van Kerkhove. I am actually from the other CLEA wing, the CLPS wing. Francis referred to that. We merged into one bigger center. So I come from that other philosophy of science background. And that center, for those who do not happen to know, was founded by Jean-Paul van Bendegem, who, of course, also has an intimate link, or has had, in any case, with Leo Apostel. And yesterday in Ghent, he could testify about that. I shall, in what I do, connect to many things that have been said this morning, luckily, so that's a good thing. And also yesterday, incidentally, for those who could be there. So I'm very happy to get this opportunity, actually, apart from the contents, to be able to pay tribute to Leo Apostel and the way that he has been indirectly mostly an influence to me. Tribute to him, but also to Jean-Paul, who is here with us. But allow me to start thus. Sta mij toe als volgt te beginnen. There's a story going around about the late ethics professor in Ghent, Hugo van den Enden. I think Jean-Paul told me that story, that he once had to teach a course on metaphysics. And he started that course like this. Dear students, of course, we all know that metaphysics is nonsense. So therefore, this course will be about rationality. I'm going to do a similar trick with you. No, I'm not allowed. Okay. Up, eh? I will just use the arrows. I can stay here and use the arrows. Yeah, that's better. So this is the trick. Should I down or up? Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. Well, I'll do it. I'll use the arrows. So this is a trick. This is going to be my actual talk. But fortunately, there be a lot of links to the topic of worldviews. By the way, I'm not implying that I myself think that either worldviews or indeed metaphysics are nonsense, not in the least. And so would not Leo Apostel, of course, for those who are a bit acquainted with his work. But that will not be the central topic. I will get back to the topic of worldviews at the end, if time allows, with Apostel. So I'm going to focus on a particular paper, and at the end he connects with the issue of worldviews. But en passant, as I said, I think you might make this connection yourself at several points, because it will resonate with what has already been told about worldviews. So what I thought was nonsense is to talk about worldviews for the 5th consecutive talk and still be original. I noticed when I saw the program, worldviews, I thought, oh, I'm lost in line. So is there going to be anything left for me to say? So I pondered a bit about it, and I ended up with this topic. Okay, let's see. So this is a bit the agenda for today. A number of introductions, as you see, and then I will talk about a paper, a specific paper, and I will follow it roughly. I will present the core ideas to you and skip a lot of it as well, of course, in order to make you acquainted with the paper in question. More about that later. This is a picture I took, an actual picture I took of the remembrance card that I received at the funeral services of Leo Apostel. I only once met him in person, Well, is to say, I attended a talk by him when I was a fresh philosophy student, and this was during the last year of his life, the academic year of 94, 95. I don't even remember the topic of that talk, to be honest. But of course, we, as for example, Bart Van Kerkhove said yesterday, the spirit of Apostle was still very much within Blandijn, within the Ghent program. Yeah, because I got several, I got courses from several of his students. Well, Apostle had no apostles, as is known, but he had no followers, but he inspired a lot of people. So I just mentioned Rick Pinkston, Ronald Kommers, Karel Boulaert, Dirk Buitens. I had course from all these people, and there were a number of others, but I didn't get courses from them. And of course, when I arrived here a couple of years later, there was Jean-Paul van Bendegem. I'm inclined to say that, but he might disagree. He might disagree with that he's the most apostolian of those apostolians who are not apostles. I have a number of reasons for that. One of them is the broad interest. I think who knows Jean-Paul will agree with me that he's interested in everything. And also he wants to connect. He constantly wants to connect things, put things into a structure, and that, as he sometimes said literally, puts him at rest. I have connected this. Oh, good. So of course it also already resonates worldviews. By the way, yeah, so here's the beautiful picture of Stefan van Vleteren. And then here, very sober, and a very beautiful phrase. O schoonheid van het onvoltooide, O beauty of the unfinished. Well, I guess if you know something about the trajectory of Apostle and his moonshots, maybe we can call them, then this is so beautiful that it implies that he still found rest in what he could achieve, and yeah, even if he aimed for the impossible. Okay, but let's not dwell on that too long. I've explained the change of title. I want to point to a number of indeed things that are typical for Apostle. In my view, when I was a student, I read Gebroken Orde, which was apparently quite popular. But to be honest, when I read it back then, I could not understand a lot of it as a student, which was of course frustrating. Maybe that would still go. It's not a book that you read systematically, I think, from cover to back. Of course, there are very inspiring, interesting things in it. But one of the qualities is indeed dense style of writing and also thinking of Apostle, which makes it sometimes very hard to figure out what he is doing. Very intertextual references all around. But at the other hand, once you get the drift of it, he often gives a very simple, inherently simple message. And I think that the text I will be dealing with today does have both qualities. Strangely enough, it's not at all dense. It's very transparent, I think. So you could all go on and read it. That is, if you read Dutch, because it's a text that, to my knowledge, has only been published in Dutch. Okay, what are other qualities? Well, this is not shared by Jean-Paul van Bendegem, I would say. The others are, and a very open mind, of course, but on the other hand, a stubbornness in chasing certain ideas. And so the idea of rationality is one of them, as I will try to show today. And what you can read here is what my former colleague Patrick Alou and myself called Jean-Paul's paradox, but it could also be Apostle's paradox: to adopt a radical position, which is then only modestly defended, perhaps with a little reluctance or shyness, but never abandoned. This will be important in a moment. This paradox doesn't ask to be resolved, for it almost defines its originator. Yet it can leave one wondering whether he's modestly radical or radically modest. Okay, and then finally, of course, integrative thinking, overcoming opposites by trying to reconcile them at a higher level, at a meta level, which is, of course, and it's been mentioned a few times, I think, here, a big question that we can ask about worldviews. At what level do they operate? We have to integrate different perspectives. How do we go about that? And at the end of the paper, I will be talking about, Apostle gives a suggestion, but yeah, it's not really a very hopeful one in terms of resolution. So the open-endedness will become very, very apparent. Okay, finally then, this is the paper I'll be talking about. Eindigheid, complexiteit en rationaliteit, finiteness, complexity and rationality. All translations are mine because I don't have a PDF. Maybe it is available now through the library of the UGent, I don't know. But I have the paper copy here. It's from a book, Waarde en zin van de cultuurwetenschappen in de 20e eeuw. Value and Meaning or Sense of the Humanities in the 20th Century. It was written at the end of the 20th century, and Apostle is taking stock as regards the humanities, which are, in his perception, in a bit of a decline, and maybe they still are, for a number of reasons, and he tries to make that analysis, which contrasts with the importance he gives to those particular sciences. He's not dealing with philosophy, by the way, or neither with anthropology, also not with communication sciences, which have kind of split off of those humanities into the social sciences, but he's talking about the traditional humanities, history and linguistics and literary studies. Okay, very briefly, for history, he says, for example, the meaning of things is rooted in their history. So to understand something is also to understand the history of something, hence the importance of it. And language, linguistics, well, discussing with one another, getting into dialogue to overcome differences, to solve our differences of opinion, to reach higher order synthesis, you need to go into dialogue. And well, I think it's obvious. He also explicitly mentioned this towards the end of the paper, that developments like rhetorics and argumentation theory, or you could call it also informal logic, are very important in that respect. Next to, complementary to formal logic, to the deductive reasoning, etc. And it's of course this tension that will be also present when he's discussing the rationality concept. So I have a number of good reasons to deal with this this paper. I think it still contains timely ideas, but that we can discuss about. It gives an image of through the analysis of rationality of the general project of Apostle, I think. So it's conspicuous and it is Dutch. So I hope to disclose some of it at this occasion. And a funny thing, well, a telling thing actually is that, okay, I gave you the title, but actually it's the title of the paper, and then the section in the book has also a subtitle, and it's called An Afterword for the Future. Well, I think that maybe indeed Apostle is speaking to us near the end of his life, to be fair. So he kind of synthesizes, I think, in a very clear way, and maybe the collaboration with Jenny Walry is very important in that respect. He summarizes his view upon rationality. There's a number of other places I found references, and maybe I can get to those at the end of the talk, maybe not. References to rationality in connection with worldviews in the first case, and with the discussion of postmodernism, because this book, of course, posthumously published, which he wrote together with Jenny Walry, deals with that the battle with postmodernism. And yesterday we saw a beautiful fragment where he said, now I have to leave for Ostende, where I have to go and fight postmodernism. So he was participating to some kind of panel, And so that was for him an important quest, and this will also become apparent here. Of course, the defense of rationality, one can imagine that this indeed can be understood in that respect. Colin, can you remind me when I started? Okay, 15 minutes, so 15 minutes left, about. Okay, so what's the aim of the paper? I'll speed up in a minute because I won't be going into too much detail, but I'll try to give the gist of it, and also, of course, what is the essence of the message that Apostel is bringing to us. In this paper, he wants to give a reply to anti-rationalist criticism of rationalism. A criticism, the anti-rationalist criticism that is directed against systematic injustices attributed to Enlightenment philosophy or to modernity. Reference is made to sexism, post-colonialism, and also the ecological degradation. In Gebroken Orde, I found an explicit passage where he outs himself as a fan. I think he even used that word. I'm a big supporter of those movements, he says, but not at the cost of rationality. So that's something he wants to safeguard. And the task he sets himself, well, maybe not only here, but here it is, I think, summarized very well, is to resolve this apparent contradiction. So for him, there is no contradiction between those. It will become clear then, once we have a clear understanding of what rationality is, that the discussion between rationalists and anti-rationalists is completely outdated and no longer has a reason to exist. Okay, so getting into the paper itself, so I'll give a rough outline of it. He first distinguishes three types of rationality: practical or means rationality, ends or goals rationality, and cognitive rationality. Which are dynamically interconnected and not with a priority ordering. So all of them presuppose the others. Okay, it seems clear that to be practically rational, so to find the right means to reach our goals that we set, that you have to think and that you have to be cognitively rational. But the other way around goes as well. Thought processes are also actions and must use good means, which feeds into the first discussion. And to choose good action means and thought means, we as actors must have chosen our own ends. So, and by the way, I will not go into that, but he also says that, yes, albeit that is mostly associated with the subjective side, like in economics, for example, preferences. We're not studying that. That's a personal thing. Apostel says, no, no, no. Ends can be rational or irrational. You can have that discussion. You can have the discussion about certain ends and claim that these are irrational. But let's not go into that. He also says that this has been rarely studied. This is not a topic of study. So he also goes very briefly into that. The idea of the perfect rational being is, of course, associated with the Homo economicus, the perfectly rational being. Let me be very quick about this. I think most of you will be, of course, acquainted with that. Someone who has a complete understanding of their own preferences, their respective utility when they are realized, and of all available actions and their probable outcomes. And then all is needed on top is clear decision rules to see what type of calculation we shall make in order to get to the preferred solution. So action choice is a simple calculation. Of course, the ideal circumstances are non-existent, which is also within economics, I guess, widely recognized. There are fundamental reasons for this. We have time constraints, limited cognitive power, and the tasks are sometimes very complex. So, and here it comes for the first time, we need an alternative theory of limited rationality. So the aim is to develop such a systematic theory of limited rationality, which takes into account all these non-ideal circumstances, which I shall now not rehearse. As for cognitive rationality, something similar applies. Rational actors have a consistent set of beliefs, a deductively closed set of beliefs, and a critical stance towards their own beliefs. So here also we bump into reality, and this has also already been mentioned or discussed. We all have contradictory beliefs, at least implicitly. An apostle says, well, these become explicit, we are confronted with new information, or when we need that particular information to make decisions, then they arise and we are confronted with them. But they are already implicitly present. And this is a never-ending process. That was also mentioned in a former talk, I think Francis. And for fundamental reasons, Apostle is relying on Gödel here, not the original article, but a derivative of the famous article about identifying contradictions. So Gödel showing that you might know that there are contradictions in the system, but you cannot have an algorithm to go and identify them. So you have to wait until they kind of pop up and you're confronted with them. Not all the consequences of our beliefs can be known. That's reality too. Not even when limited to explicit beliefs. And here he relies on a result by Church. This not even applies for very simple logical systems, and a human being not being such a simple system, of course. Okay, what are the possibilities for weakening these requirements? Yeah, with reference to what was already mentioned, I think, you have to think contextually. And you have to, in trying to limit contradictions, you limit yourself to removing the crucial ones. And as a consequence, yeah, what is asked of a rational cognitive being is watered down. Most belief subsystems will be consistent. The important ones in relevant situations, even more so. And the rationality concept will evolve because of this, from ideal to a limited one, without giving up the rationality bottom line. So you have to be at least capable of drawing some consequences. So there has to be some systemicity in order to count as a rational being. The minimal assumption is thus that there is at least an essential logical apparatus present. Okay, so I will skip the ends rationality part. I will also be brief about the foundations of the bounded rationality. Here, yeah, Apostle takes stock of a number of domains that might be inspirational or foundational to the formulation, the building of a theory of bounded rationality, which he does not do himself, but he gives the building blocks that for him will be very important. So this, following the negative story, is the positive story. He will develop a theory or try to suggest the development of a theory of limited rationality. Okay. Let's see. I can't see the numbers of my slides here, so I have to search a bit. So very briefly, there are a number of slides following saying something about all these domains, but I will not go into these because I don't have the time, but I will summarize them. Information economics with reference to the work, for example, by Herbert Simon. So this says that, as was mentioned a few minutes ago, thought operations cost time, energy, and cognitive power, and these are limited in supply. And then, very importantly, I give a bit of a large quote here, which contains that idea, and that will return for all 7 disciplines, because he doesn't think that this is a negative thing, because these limitations you can study. You can study them, so you can build knowledge about them. And that, of course, will be the building block of a positive account. You see here, positive science of rationality. Of course, which in its turn will not be perfect, obviously. So this repeats itself. This was already mentioned also, I think, the study of memory. So our actual memories are fragmented. I think Clément mentioned this. And this allows for contradictions to be stored until these pop up. Again, our negative remark becomes a positive one, because you can study this and discover the principles of local bounded rationality. So this local is, of course, a way of saying, yeah, this is also a topic that has been raised. We're looking, of course, for global knowledge and worldviews, but in reality, our knowledge is bounded, but also local and contradictory, etc. So this term, in that respect, is also popping up. Complex systems, this is what this is about. They're often more vulnerable or less robust than rudimentary ones, despite being more precise. So complexity of systems will not always be preferable, because when there's a glitch, everything comes to a halt. So you might be you might get more value from robust systems that are less precise. He will rephrase that in terms of vagueness later in the paper. Then computational explosion makes rational problem solvers often, out of necessity, prefer heuristics over algorithm. Again, this might not be so controversial, especially today. As for actual inductive thinking, we often judge intuitively instead of going through a tedious thinking process. Here he refers to Kahneman, the late Nobel Prize winner, thinking fast and slow. So the two types of thinking, because meticulous thinking is difficult and tedious, we often judge very intuitively, fast, and perhaps also stereotypically, which obviously imposes a limitation. Again, here the systematic study will give us information in order to build a theory of bounded rationality. And finally, insight and gestalt. By the way, the former and this one connects to discussions about AI, I think, today. So this one is about, well, maybe the Kantian idea that we have an intuition that we impose, that we have prior to experience. So we are looking for patterns. I think one such pattern that was very important for Apostel was the symmetry idea. So this is not algorithmic, because algorithmic thought, so to speak, proceeds in a totally different way. Okay, the learning I shall skip. So from this list of sources, a theory of bounded rationality can be built. This is a summary of what was done before. So from this, contours of a general theory of bounded rationality emerge. And here's a reference to vague concepts again, because precise ones are too costly to define. And here also, Apostel is starting to navigate, because of course, once you give up the ideal ID and you recognize that there will only be bounded rationality, the question becomes, yeah, how far can you stretch this? And he goes into that. Yes, there is a danger of nihilism, he says. The boundaries seem not to be able to be stretched infinitely. What about situations that are entirely dependent on chance, desires, authority? Oh, these are also boundedly rational, he says, but in the limit. And it can have a justification. For example, if it's a very unimportant problem, if we can rely on our intuition, or if you don't have the competence and have to rely on authority, then yeah, when you give up yourself all rationality, this can still be counted as boundedly rational. But still, this does not invalidate the rationality concept. Complexity reduction is inevitable for finite beings. Okay, so from all this comes, I think this is a crucial quote as to the general theory of bounded rationality. A global theory of local rationality. We can strive for that, he says. A precise theory of thinking with vague concepts. A consistent theory of inconsistent thinking. They are all necessary and possible. Well, I don't know about the possible, but necessary. That's the most important thing for him. It's something we should strive for. This also refers to what was already said. We should not stop, we should not despair. And this was typically for Apostle, I think. You should go on. And although the synthesis will always be local, partial, and provisional itself. And so what I implicitly said, he makes also explicit the importance of ideals. What's the point of having ideals then? Is it not just a benchmark for deviation? No, he says, we have the obligation to strive for the ideal. So this ideal is very important to him. He doesn't want to give that up, because that serves as a means of comparison and communication between locally deviating situations. So it gives a kind of a fixed point. Of course, the question is if you recognize the same fixed point in order to talk about it. But in any case, this is his ideal. It's not a luxury, but a necessary condition for any coordination of action. Okay, why be rational anyway? Because we have to, he says. When we are confronted with complexity, when we find ourselves in the midst of the sea of life, we have to act, and we have to try to do that in a rational way. So we don't have the choice, for him at least, to be irrational. And this is also a beautiful quote: the absolutely unique and new demands of us, or the absolutely unique and new demands of us a radical creative improvisation each time. We don't have the strength to muster that all the time. Therefore, we try to order, classify, and generalize, to simplify and schematize, so that we partially know the new as a representative of the old. Only an inexhaustible omnipotence would be able to grasp the unique as unique in all its actions without any rationality. So that's the reason why people need rationality. If you're omnipotent and if you know everything right away intuitively, you don't need the detour of rationality. So exactly the thing that makes us boundedly rational makes us rational, namely that we are finite. And there's a beautiful quote in Dutch: make the most of our finite youth. That's what we do. And the term that he uses in Dutch is woekeren. Woekeren met de eindigheid. So we try and try and try, because we cannot do otherwise. We make the best of it. Okay, I will have to skip a lot. He goes into the history of science. The basic message here is that the theory of limited rationality can serve as an alternative for ancient theories of rationality, Carnap, Popper, without going the deep end of giving up rationality. Maybe one can think here of Imre Lakatos as someone who has tried that. Maybe this has not been tried fully. I don't know. It's up for discussion. Then he also returns to Perelman-Toulmin, argumentation theory, rhetorics, as a step up to the social dimension to it all, because he has only been talking about individual rationality up till now. When we step up to the social, then we need some kind of grip on how this interaction will be about. Well, argumentation theory will be able to study that social distribution of thought tasks that we are indeed forced to. And he says these three forms of rationality are also found there at the group level. Wow. This is also a project for the future. I will skip this about worldview and bounded rationality, because I myself think it's rather cumbersome. In Gebroken Orde, he also refers to scientific rationality and worldviews. This is a bit more clear, I would say. And an important thing is here, unmentioned till now, the normative dimension. And this is part and parcel, of course, of the worldviews, but also feeds into a theory of science. Because if we are going to discuss the aims and means within science, this is going to be value-laden. He recognizes this. This was also brought up before here. I will end here. Excuse me that I took so long. A final visit of the issue. Yeah, very beautiful. At the very end of his life, this is a manuscript of early 95, the year he died, incorporated in Hopeloos Gelukkig, Postmodernism and Enlightenment, Antagonism or Continuation. Here also, so the whole book is about the confrontation with postmodernism. Here also he promotes a positive integrative approach between modernism and postmodernism, but against an autodestructive postmodernism. So here, of course, we talked about the attack on the Enlightenment values because they have created a number of exclusions, or that's that's the charge. And he says he recognizes that and says, yes, from liberating through non-realistic universalism, we can pass via the recognition of the multiplicity of viewpoints. But again, not at the rejection of rationality, as postmodernism does. And this will be my final quote. The postmodern thinker is wrong to believe that his ideals forbid him to strive for systems or hierarchies. If he or she succumbs to the complete irrationality and total fragmentation, then he locks himself up in one partial perspective to become much stronger than the classical Enlightenment thinker has ever been, a secluded absolutist. Wow. I think this is very beautiful. And I had a concluding slide, which I will not read, but yeah, this is it. I'll leave it here. Thanks.